Hi, everybody. This is a short lecture for Chapter 4 in the Business Math or Contemporary Business Math textbook. The topic of this chapter is the metric system, which is also called the SI system, which is International System of Units. So the reason that we talk about the SI system, and you can use those two terms interchangeably, SI system or metric system. The reason that we talk about them is because every country in the world except 3 uses the SI system. The 3 that don't use the SI system are the United States, Liberia in Western Africa, and Myanmar, which is the country formerly known as Burma. And Liberia actually uses it quite a bit. I'm just not sure if they've signed an accord to use it. So it could just be us in Myanmar at this point. But anyway, because the United States is a huge country and we trade with everybody, it's important that everybody know both sets of units. So when we start talking about the metric system or the SI, why do so many countries use this set of units? Well, the units that we use in the United States has different names. I like to call it the US customary system because it sort of arose out of our custom, but you can also call it, if you're working on cars, for example, they call it SAE, which is the Society of Automotive Engineers, or it can be called the British Engineering System, which is silly because the Brits don't use it and engineers don't use it. So, but there are different names for it. But US customary is the most common that I will use. So in the United States, as it says here, we measure distances in inch, feet, yards, miles, and these are unevenly spaced. So for example, there are 12 inches in a foot, 3 feet in a yard, 5,280 feet in a mile. We measure weight using ounces, pounds, and tons. Once again, there's 16 ounces in a regular pound and 2,000 pounds in a regular ton. And the third unit, the third quantity that we measure is a volume, and we can use pints, quarts, or gallons. Once again, there are 2 pints to a quart and 4 quarts to a gallon. And in other parts of the world, when we use the SI system, we just use 1 unit of length, which is meters, 1 unit of mass or weight. They're not exactly the same, but in this class, we can call them the same thing, which are grams, and then 1 unit of liquid volume, which is called a liter. Now, what happens with the metric system or the SI system is when we start talking about those base units, in other words, liter, gram, meter, we put a prefix in front of it that means powers of 10. So in other words, if you use the prefix deci, it's 1/10. So a deciliter is 1/10 of a liter, a decimeter is 1/10 of a meter, and a decigram is 1/10 of a gram, and so on. So going down, you go deci, centi, milli, micro, nano, and you can see this is 1/10, 1/100th, 1,000th, 1,000,000th, and 1,000,000,000th. Getting bigger, if we need to measure larger quantities, we go to tens, which is deca, 100 hecto, 1,000 kilo, a million, which is mega, and a billion, which is giga. And of course, there are bigger, like tera, like a terabyte on a computer is much larger than a billion. Let's just leave it at that. But some of the units we're more familiar with, such as kilo, it's very common to measure length in kilometers or kilometers, but a kilometer means 1,000 meters. Now, even though we don't see it as much, a kiloliter would mean 1,000 liters, and a kilogram, which we do see often, is 1,000 grams. So you always put a prefix with a base unit to give an amount. That way, the grades in between smaller and larger are always powers of 10, which is really kind of what it's famous for. So this page talks a little bit about what we just said. Kilo means 1,000, deci means a tenth, mega means a million. And it doesn't matter what the base unit is. You can take whatever base unit you like, use whatever prefix you like, and then you'll have that power of 10 and that physical quantity. And it's always the same. So no more ounces to pounds, feet to miles, and pints to gallons, for example. All right, now there are a lot of different base units in the metric system, in the SI system, but in this section in chapter 4, we're just going to use those three: meter, liter, and gram. So this talks specifically about meters, and like we said, the pronunciation is a little bit different. This is pronounced kilometer rather than kilometer, and that would be 1,000 meters, down to a millimeter, which is a thousandth of a meter. All right, so here we talk about how you change base units or others into units based on other powers of 10. And there is a handy tool that I'm going to put up next to show you. It's called a stair-step converter that will help you with this process. So at this point, I'm going to share the screen and show you what this stair-step converter looks like, and then I will post it to our Moodle page. And some people find this to be very helpful, and you can use it on a midterm exam or a quiz if you'd like. But basically what the stair-step converter does is it puts the base unit in the middle. We use meter here, but it could just as easily be liter or gram. And then you go down this way for smaller units and up this way for larger units. So if you have, let's say, 10 meters, that's going to be 100 decimeters, or excuse me, 10 meters, or let's just say 1 meter to make it simple. 1 meter will be 10 decimeters, will be 100 centimeters, will be 1,000 millimeters. 1 meter will be 0.1 decameters, 0.01 hectometers, and 0.001 kilometers. And so what this means is that you can take whatever unit you're given. So for example, if you look at this page, let's find this here, of some homework or an example here where we start with, let's start with 600 decameters and go to hectometers. It tells us that 600 decameters is 60 hectometers, but how does that work? Okay, so what you do is, if you choose to use the stair-step converter, decameters to hectometers. So let's go over here to the other screen. Okay. Okay, so if we start with decameters, we put our little pointer right here at decameters, and we're going to go to hectometers. So that means we come up this way. All right, so that means if we started with 1 decameter, we would move the decimal point 1 to the left and come out with 0.1 hectometers. If we instead started with 600 decameters, we would move the decimal place 1 to the left and come out with 60 hectometers. Okay, so you can put your unit, whatever you start with. Another problem on that page was decimeters. If you start here and you go to centimeters, you'll multiply by 10 or move the decimal to the right. So in other words, when you go to the left on the stair-step converter, you move the decimal to the left. When you go to the right on the stair-step converter, you move the decimal to the right. So it's a nice little visual tool to help with that. All right, so once again, like I said, that will be on your Moodle page in case you want to use it. So when we continue with this, when we're changing from units, here is a table, just like we had the stair-step converter to help us convert between different prefixes in the metric system. We have some values to tell us how much a metric or SI unit has as an equivalent in the US customary system. So here we have units of length, where we have meters, decameters, decimeters, and so forth, converting to miles, inches, feet, and yards. Okay, then going backward, inches, yards, and miles into SI units. Okay, and then this is the same thing that I just said with the stair step converter, but to change from liters to kiloliters, which means smaller to large, or larger, follow these steps. So it basically tells you whether you divide by 10. If you're going from a smaller unit to a larger unit, you divide. And if you're going from a larger unit to a smaller unit, you divide, excuse me, I said that the wrong way. Larger to smaller, as you would hear, you multiply. Okay, so if you go from, I want to make sure I say this correctly, from a larger unit, excuse me, from a smaller unit to a larger unit, smaller unit to a larger unit, you divide. If you go from a larger unit to a smaller unit, you multiply. And in the metric system, it's always a power of 10. 10, 100, 1/10, 100th, etc. Okay. So here are some, those were units of length. Here are some units of volume. And same where you go back and forth between metric and US customary. And same thing, larger to smaller, you divide. If the unit goes from a larger unit to a smaller unit, you divide. If the unit goes from a larger unit to a smaller unit, you multiply. Now, the other part I want you to know is I will not make you memorize any of these. You can write these out in your own handwriting. You can use a stair step converter. You could write some words on a piece of paper that says, however this information organized is best for you. A sheet of paper in your own handwriting is fine to bring into the exam with you. All right, so then we get into the bottom line where we just sort of review these ideas, right? And then we convert. Here we're converting from US customary into metric. Here we're going from metric into US customary. These are measures of length. Same thing here, except we have measures of volume. Same thing here, except we have measures of either mass or weight. And then the self-check review kind of does the same thing. We're just this is called converting, going back and forth between the two things. Make sure that you do this using the stair step converter or a piece of paper, because you're not going to be allowed to have your calculator on the exam, right? So make sure that you're comfortable with these things. Now, you may notice on the Moodle page, there's this lecture, and then there's another lecture that says, begin this at 2750. So in other words, most of the other lecture is devoted to chapter 3, but when you come in at 27 minutes and 50 seconds, we will be talking about the metric system. And specifically, we will be working out a problem. The problem is from the assignment, and I believe it's assignment number 2. You don't have to do the assignments if you're comfortable with the rest of it. However, if you don't feel like you have enough material after you've done the bottom line and the self-check, if you don't feel comfortable with this material, then go ahead and work out the assignments as well. Now, it's really important to note on this, some people have worked a lot with the metric system. Some people are very familiar with it, and other people, this may be the first time that you've dealt with it mathematically. So if you're new to the metric system, and if you're new to converting between the SI system and the US customary system, it's going to take you a little bit longer, and you may need a little bit of extra help. So I hope you will make sure that you get a hold of me and let me help. Now, today, the day I'm recording this is the day that we took our first quiz. It's Wednesday, February 9th. And so next week, when we meet on Wednesday, we'll discuss this material, and then the homework will be due on Friday. But if you have the opportunity to start working on it a little bit ahead of time, and if you start to have problems, please let me know, because I am here to help. All right, so in the meantime, take a look at the stair step converter, which will be on the Moodle page. See if it's helpful to you. and it's helpful generally to visual people. If you're a visual learner, it can be very helpful. Then watch the first video, or you can watch this as the first video, and then watch the other video for chapter 4, beginning at 27 minutes and 50 seconds for a little bit more information on working a problem. All right, everybody, well, have a great week, and let me know when I can help.